The movie opens up with a scene of a depressed mother comforting her special needs son after her most recent emotional breakdown. We're then ushered into idyllic suburban scenes of laundry, painting, and cleaning. Tommy then leaves with his mother Jess, who is going out for a day-long boating excursion. This is where we're introduced to Sally and Downey. The two have brought along their friend Heather so that she could do the dirty with Greg. However, Greg is the one who invited Jess along, and soon she shows up with his cabin boy Victor. However, she is dazed and confused and without Tommy. After a brief siesta, Jess feels a little bit better. However, Victor is perplexed about her confusion about her son. After a conversation with Greg, however, she's convinced that she is a wonderful mother and deserves some time off. This albatross is a foreshadowing. Victor is the only single guy there, and Sally shows her displeasure of Heather's carnal interest in him. I mean, seriously though, just look at that face. The conversation comes to an abrupt ending, however, whenever they lose their wind. This is strange because there's a gale force storm heading their way. They try to contact the Coast Guard but are cut off by an SOS call, which again is foreshadowing. Despite clearly knowing what to do in that situation, they end up being capsized. In the following scene, we discover that everyone survived except Heather, who never came to the surface. Seemingly out of nowhere, they're saved by a mysterious ship. They board only to find out that they have the entire cruise ship to themselves. As they head to the bridge to search for signs of life, Jess is struck by intense déjà vu. Greg tries to convince her that it's all in her head, but when a ghostly figure drops a set of keys and runs off, Jess identifies them as her own. After this, they discover that there's an elaborate banquet feast set up, but still no guests. Jess notices something in a mirror, which sends Victor running down some hallways, because that's a reasonable response to seeing your own reflection. Greg and Jess follow the sound of running water to find a note written in blood on a mirror. Greg assumes it to be a practical joke, but Jess runs off to find Sally and Downey. Instead, she finds that all of the food for the banquet feast has rotted, and that Victor, who is now for some reason covered in blood, wants to see her eliminated. He begins choking her, but Jess manages to fight him off. Jess then runs to the theater, where everyone is angry with her for bringing them there and then shooting Greg. She of course denies it, but then somebody else starts shooting at them. She attempts to flee, but eventually a bag-headed gunman confronts her. She's able to fight the gunman off while the gun's loaded, but apparently she's not very good at dodging unloaded guns. She eventually wins the fight, but before being knocked overboard, the bag-headed gunman makes a strange comment about eliminating everyone in order to go home. She then hears the cries of her capsized companions asking for help getting aboard the ship. As she moves around, we observe her adjusting to all the events that we've just seen, but from a different angle. When she returns to the water room, the message is already on the mirror, but when she peeks in on her friends, everything is as it should be. Then she makes her way outside to meet Victor, where she tries to persuade him to leave the ship because there are multiples of her and the others have all been eliminated.
If we're dead and there's two of you, how are we all gonna get off the ship?
During the course of the conversation, Victor's neck accidentally gets impaled, which of course explains why he later tries to choke her. In the locker room area, she finds plenty of proof of repeated cycles, and as she struggles with this, the situation truly comes into focus. Now that the instructions are clearer, she decides to take a new course of action and is encouraged when she learns that it seems she can alter the course of events. Although she is unable to save Greg, she nevertheless aids the others before briefly leaving them to look for Victor. However, before she gets back, they leave with Baghead Jess, and eventually they all get stabbed. After being attacked, Sally manages to make the SOS call that they had heard earlier, and then goes off to what seems to be her favorite place to die. Jess tries to convince her that she's not a bad person, but clearly Sally has other things on her mind. Jess has a higher vantage point from which to see the fight, which ends differently this time. And after Sally finishes expiring, Jess attempts to get to the capsized boat in order to escape. She's too slow, but now she knows that she has to be ready next time. So she attempts to make the events happen that will usher in the return of the boat. Believing that she has everything under control this time, she rushes off to write the theater message. Then, before going into full Baghead Jess mode, she invites Sally and Downey to a performance. She works hard to get the boat to come back, but in the last few minutes, she forgets how to defeat herself and has to take a plunge into the water. She miraculously survives after washing ashore on a beach and regaining consciousness. When Jess sees herself acting like towards her son, she decides to take things into her own hands. She grabs a hammer and marches inside her house to take back control of her family. She then finds her lost locket and begins preparing for her trip since she feels liberated and ready for a new beginning. But first, this happens. and she decides to give the albatross a marine burial. But apparently the cycle isn't over because she's clearly done this before. Tommy has a freak-out moment because of the blood on the window, and Jess veers into oncoming traffic. As she and Tommy lay on the ground dying, we see now Spirit Jess talking to a mysterious driver who tells her that he can take her wherever she wants to go. She decides to go back to the port. When she first sees Victor, the albatross continues its voyage.